Greek mythology and the stories within are some of the most creative and influential stories in human history. Inspiring our vocabulary, architecture, and pop culture, Greek mythology's influences are endless and will be appreciated for years to come. But what is the history behind some of these bizarre tales? And what are some of our favorite stories from that mythos? In today's episode of Tippler's 2 Cents, we'll be giving you a brief history on the origin of Greek mythology, as well as sharing some of our personal favorite stories from this unique set of tales and myths. Join us as we take a trip to ancient Greece and regale you with tales from another world. It's Grease Lightning! Get it? Welcome back, drinkers and thinkers, to another exciting episode of Tippler's 2 Cents. I'm your gracious host, Chris Walters, and joining me, as always, is our co-host and refined and graceful Sean Knox.
We get to talk about the origins of butt fucking today.
Thank you all for joining us today and letting us fill your head with our nonsense. We appreciate you guys. If you guys appreciate us and want to show that love tenfold, then what you can do is head on over to represent.com/store/Tipplers2 and pick yourself up one of our very own Tipplers 2 Cents t-shirts with designs created directly by us. A portion of that money does go to us, so that is hands down the best way that you can help us grow the show. But if you don't have any moolah to share, that's okay. We love you all the same. Just keep listening, that's fine too. Anyway, Sean, do we have any updates for our listeners on this one?
No, because we're recording this back to back with episode 9.
Yep,
so
that's right.
I guess the only update is by the time that this episode comes out, I will have been moved. But right now, as I'm recording, I am not moved. And anything that happened in the past week for you in the future, we cannot acknowledge because we have not lived there because we can't time travel just yet.
Yeah.
So right now, no updates, which is kind of great because this is something I just want to hop right into anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Well, okay, let's go ahead and share what we're drinking today for this episode. So for this episode, both me and Sean are drinking a wine. Now, what is this wine called, Sean?
It's called Apothic Red. You can get it at your local wine connoisseur, Circle K.
Damn, Circle K wine.
No, I think I got it at Walgreens, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But it's not a bad wine. We let the tannins breathe, and it has an oaky finish.
Well, all right. Since we don't have to pop these open or anything, we can just get right to it. We're going to go ahead and propose today's toast to Sean for his move to a better-looking home than this shitty fucking apartment he lives in.
Yeah, it's infested with rats. And
I'm just kidding. His apartment's fine, too. But his house is pretty nice. So, cheers to you, Sean.
Thanks, man.
Tastes like...
That is not great.
Bottom of the barrel shit. All right, guys, let's get into today's topics of Greek mythology and our favorite tales. Greek mythology is the body of myths originally told by the ancient Greeks and a genre of ancient Greek folklore. These stories concern the origin and nature of the world, the lives and activities of deities, heroes, and mythological creatures, and the origins and significance of the ancient Greeks' own culture and ritual practices. Modern scholars study the myths in an attempt to shed light on the religious and political institutions of ancient Greece and its civilization, and to gain understanding of the nature of myth-making itself. The Greek myths were initially propagated in an oral, poetic tradition, most likely by Minoan and Mycenaean singers starting in the 18th century BC. Eventually, the myths of the heroes of the Trojan War and its aftermath became part of the oral tradition of Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are very, very famous works of writing. I, unfortunately, have never read them myself, but I probably wouldn't even fucking understand if I did anyway.
I studied the Iliad in high school.
You did?
Yeah.
I think I read one of Homer's works, but it wasn't these two. But anyway, 2 poems by Homer's near contemporary Hesiod, the Theogony, and the Works and Days contains accounts of the genesis of the world, the succession of divine rulers, and the succession of human ages, the origin of human woes, and the origin of sacrificial practices. Myths are also preserved in the Homeric hymns, in fragments of epic poems of the epic cycle, in lyric poems, and the works of the tragedians and comedians of the 5th century BC.
It was epic.
In writings of scholars and poets of the Hellenistic age, and in texts from the time of the Roman Empire by writers such as Plutarch and Pausanias.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a lot of words in here that are going to be hard to say. Aside from this narrative deposit in ancient Greek literature, pictorial representations of gods, heroes, and mythic episodes feature prominently in ancient vase paintings and the decoration of votive gifts and many other artifacts. Geometric designs on pottery on pottery of the 8th century BC depict scenes from the Trojan cycle, as well as the adventures of Heracles. In the succeeding of archaic, classical, and Hellenistic periods, Homeric and various other mythological scenes appear, supplementing the existing literary evidence. Greek mythology has an extensive influence on the culture, arts, and literature of Western civilization and remains part of Western heritage and language. Poets and artists from the ancient times to the present have derived inspiration from Greek mythology and have discovered contemporary significance and relevance in themes. Obviously, unless you have been living under a rock, Greek mythology is a heavy influence in today's culture. We'll get into those influences a little bit later on, but for now, let's go ahead and get into the first chapter of Greek mythology.
Yeah, let's get all that boring shit out of the fucking way. That's why I had Chris read it. No, we just wanted to cover some of those really important details, just because it's mostly written like I didn't realize it was mostly like storybooks almost.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it seems like. But yeah, anyway. So the first chapter, the Genesis, is the ancient Greeks believed that in the beginning the world was in a state of nothingness, which they called chaos, which is fucking dope. Chaos was the nothingness at the beginning of the world described in the creation myths of classical mythology. It was a state of the universe, or cosmos. It was the state that it was in before it was created. Because early Christians did not understand how to use the word chaos properly, the word's meaning changed to something like disorder or random and not normal. It is the opposite of order. Chaos is often identified as a god itself who filled the gap between heaven and earth. Born out of chaos were the first beings. And suddenly, from light came Gaia, Mother Earth, and Earth itself. And from her came Uranus, the sky, along with other old gods called primordials, which is fucking dope. I love all of this. Like Pontus, the god of the ocean, or rather the ocean incarnate. Tartarus, the underworld. Nyx, the night. Erebos, the darkness of the underworld. It's incredibly interesting that even an adjective can be considered a Greek primeval god like Erebos, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly pretty cool. And like Tartarus, how you said the underworld, it has its own different kind of name. Like, I mean, I know that happens a lot in different other cultures too, and like how you were saying Erebos, he's just literally the darkness of the underworld. And that's kind of like one of the coolest things about Greek mythology is that it has like a name and a being for every single type of thing.
Yeah.
Like Uranus. Uranus has a fucking name.
It's Uranus.
I know, I just had to say Uranus because
I know you were fucking banking on me saying Uranus, and I know it's Uranus. You're gonna get so irritated.
Like the Greeks named Uranus.
I know, but it's Uranus.
All right, anyway.
So Gaia and Uranus
had
12 children called the Titans. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the most important of those 12 were Kronos, or Cronus, and Rhea. Gaia also gave birth to some monsters called the Cyclops, a primordial race of giants, each with a single eye in the center of their forehead. I don't know why I have to give you a description of a Cyclops, but you should fucking know. As well as the Hicatonkres, which I have to give a description on because I had to look up this fucking word separately. Because I actually knew the word, but whenever I was looking up the story individually,
You're like, Hecatonka cherries, what the fuck?
But no, it just called them the 100-handed ones. So I was like, you're fucking lazy, I know the name of it. But yeah, they're called the Hicatonkres, and they have 100 arms and 50 heads. They also represented the natural forces of earthquakes and huge tidal waves. So they were kind of like representatives of that. Uranus, disgusted by the monsters, threw them in Tartarus. Gaia, angered by Uranus, sought revenge on Uranus.
Sought revenge on Uranus. And it's also funny to point out that Uranus made Cyclops because,
dude,
we all know that Uranus has a brown eye.
Just a single brown eye.
Anyway, go ahead.
So
I'm done with the Uranus jokes.
Uranus.
I'm done.
Okay. Uranus, disgusted by the monsters, threw them in Tartarus, and Gaia, angered by Uranus, sought revenge on Uranus. Gaia used her son Kronos, who chopped off Uranus's genitals. Oh, we're a little bit extra tipsy. So yeah, Gaia used her son Kronos, who chopped off Uranus's genitals, and Kronos threw Uranus's body into the ocean, or Pontus. So he threw the sky into the ocean. That's fucking dope. From the blood of his genitals came the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite. So it seems like that's a common misconception that like Zeus was the first god. He wasn't. He's actually like the youngest, I think. But yeah, Aphrodite was actually the firstborn god. But anyway, Kronos married his sister Rhea and gave birth to 6 children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus, who along with Aphrodite were called the gods. Kronos, who was afraid of a prophecy delivered to him by Uranus before cutting off his fucking meat rod, swallowed each of his children each time they were born. The prophecy stated that one day his children would cut him up, by the way. It's not concrete whether this prophecy was actually a prophecy or it was more just Uranus cursing Kronos with the same fate, something like, "Ah! That's my dick! Why would you go for the dick? Fuck! I hope your kids cut you the fuck up! Dick first, of course, then of course the rest of your body! Oh, there's a lot of dick blood. I'm getting tired." Rhea did not like this, so she saved Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead, because Kronos just had fucking 200.
He just fucking loves rocks.
Kronos just had 200 IQ. Zeus was raided by a goat named Amalthea. There we go. In a mountain cave located in Crete, where when Zeus was old enough, he tricked Kronos into drinking a mixture of wine and mustard. What the fuck? Kronos vomited up the rest of the gods, who, being immortal, had been growing up completely undigested in Kronos' stomach. Zeus and the other gods then had an epic war with the Titans. Zeus won with the help of the Hecatonkres and the Cyclops, which Zeus freed from Tartarus. And after they won the war, Zeus cut Kronos into pieces and threw him as well as the other Titans into Tartarus. Zeus was from then on the leader of the gods, and Poseidon took over the oceans, and Hades took over the underworld. So basically, Poseidon took over Pontus, and Hades took over Tartarus, which is, to use the actual words. But Zeus then married his sister Hera, and crowned her Queen of Olympus. Men were later created by the Switzerland of Titans, Prometheus, who did not participate in the war. Chris, have you actually ever heard this awesome first chapter of Greek mythology?
I can't say that I have.
I know you probably heard like the Kronos eating his kids thing.
Yeah, I heard about that part, and I do remember I took part of my class in, I want to say it was English, which is weird that I learned about Greek mythology in English class, but I'm fairly certain it was English in high school, where we had like a whole section of stuff where we were learning about Greek stuff. So I'm sure I did hear this at one point, but I obviously didn't retain it. I retained some info, which I'll probably bring up later if we don't cover it. But yeah, none of this stuff. None about chopping off dicks and Uranus getting revenge.
Uranus. But yeah, also that kind of same thing. I'm spitballing here, but the same thing with like the betrayal of one's own offspring that kept going with Zeus. I didn't have enough time to put it in the notes, but I forgot he ends up punishing one of his children for basically no fucking reason. And it's just one of those things. Like I like the idea of like I said, like I don't know if Uranus was cursing Kronos or what, or if he actually did give him like a prophecy or not, but it's just kind of one of those cool things where it's like he put that thought in his head, so he ended up fucking himself, because to save himself from this, he, put Zeus in the position to want to kill him or cut him up. Yeah, it's just one of those interesting, like, cyclical things. Like, it wouldn't have happened if he didn't just not believe Uranus. Yeah. But before we move on to the next story, it's time for what? What, Chris?
Tibbler's Tidbit.
Tibbler's Tidbit.
All right, so you should know by now what Tibbler's Tidbit is, especially if you're, listening to us on a episodic basis. But if this is your first time listening, Tibbler's Tidbit is a small segment in where I tell you a fun, random fact about alcohol. So today's Tibbler's Tidbit is this. The tradition of bumping glasses with a cheers, as we do when toasting, started in ancient Greece, where the practice was used to ensure no one was poisoning one another. When the glasses would bump, the drinks would spill over into each other, and thus everyone would be drinking the same drink. So, if it was poison, obviously the person poisoning the drinks wouldn't want to drink it. Even earlier to this, the host of a party was the first one to drink a cup of wine to show his guests that he did not intend to poison them. So
that's interesting shit, actually.
It's super interesting for one, and just two, like how chaotic of a time it was to live back in ancient Greece.
In Greece, there's just butt fucking and poisoning and fucking gods. Just
you have to bump drinks and pretend to be friendly with somebody who could be poisoning you just to try to make sure they're not poisoning you.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, this has been your Tibbler's Tidbit.
Tibbler's Tidbit. I'm really stuck on butt fucking. I should have put a whole segment just about butt fucking in today's episode.
All right, guys. Now that we got the Greek mythology version of Genesis out of the way, and not the one from Phil Collins.
Damn it.
But let's go ahead and get into some of our favorite stories and legends. We'll start with my personal favorite, which is Achilles! Achilles was one of the greatest warriors and heroes in Greek mythology. He was a major character in the Iliad by Homer, where he fought in the Trojan War against the city of Troy. Achilles' father was Peleus, king of the Myrmidons, and his mother was Thetis, a sea nymph. After Achilles was born, his mother wanted to protect him from harm. So she did this by, like any mother would do. She held him by the heel and dipped him into the river Styx, which is the, in Greek mythology, the river Styx was located in the underworld and had special powers, but it was like the river that would transport one person from the mortal realm to the underworld. Mm-hmm. And in Greek mythology, the river Styx had special powers. So when she dipped him into this, he became invulnerable by everywhere except for where she was holding him, which was by his heel. So because Achilles was a demigod, or rather a sea nymph, or rather half a sea nymph, he was very strong and soon became a great warrior. However, he was also half human and wasn't immortal like his mother. He would get old and die someday, and he could also be killed. And it's also because of this that we have the whole term Achilles' heel. Mm-hmm. Because she was holding him by the heel, that was the only place that he was vulnerable.
Yeah,
And
the tendon itself is called the Achilles tendon, and when you use the term Achilles heel, that usually means your weakness.
yeah, it's referring to a weakness, and that's because Achilles' heel was his one and only weakness. So the story starts out when Helen, the wife of the Spartan king Menelaus, was taken by the Trojan prince Paris. So some backstory to why Paris took Helen. Paris took in celebration of marriage of Peleus and Thetis, Achilles' parents. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Zeus hosted a banquet on Mount Olympus. Every deity and demigod had been invited, except Eris, the goddess of strife, who no one wanted because she was a troublemaker at a wedding. For revenge, Eris threw the golden apple of discord inscribed with
Te Calliste.
Te Calliste, which means for the most beautiful, into the party, and provoking a squabble over the attendant goddesses for whom it had been meant. Which I actually thought the apple of discord was from the goddess Discord, or Discordia.
It was involved in the story, so I put it in there. It might be the same fucking thing.
Yeah, there's a goddess known as Discordia who has a golden apple. It causes discord.
I don't know, man.
Chaos.
I looked up I looked up Eris just to make sure it was accurate, and it seems pretty accurate. So
I mean, I don't know. It might be something else.
By the way, these names always change and shit too, because like I said, Cronus, Hercules is also Heracles and shit like that. So.
I could be confusing it with some sort of Roman thing too. So
yeah, that's true.
But anyway, sorry. So she throws that apple into the party, and they start squabbling over each other. The goddesses thought to be the most beautiful were Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, and each one claimed the apple. They started a quarrel, so they asked Zeus to choose one of them. Knowing that choosing any one of them would bring him the hatred of the other two, Zeus did not want to take part in the decision. He thus appointed Paris to select the most beautiful. Escorted by Hermes, who was the messenger to the gods, the three goddesses bathed in the spring of Mount Ida, which would have been hot as shit, and they were approached by Paris as he herded his cattle. Having been given permission by Zeus to set any conditions he saw fit, Paris required that the goddesses undress before him. Hell yeah, good job, Paris. Alternatively, the goddesses themselves chose to disrobe to show all of their beauty.
Either way, it's badass.
Because, I mean, why not? Yeah, and Paris just wins out of this no matter what. Still, Paris could not decide, because, he had three hot chicks undressing in front of him and don't obviously want to try to choose one of them to be the hotter one. As all three were ideally beautiful, so the goddesses attempted to bribe him to choose among them. Hera offered ownership of all of Europe and Asia. Athena offered skill in battle, wisdom, and all the abilities of the greatest warriors. Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite and therefore Helen. Helen was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta, of course, and her marriage, a fact Aphrodite neglected to mention, so Paris had to raid Menelaus' house to steal Helen from him, according to some accounts. She fell in love with Paris and left willingly. So the Greeks' expedition to retrieve Helen from Paris and Troy is the mythological basis of the Trojan War. This triggered the war because Helen was famous for her beauty throughout Archaea, which was ancient Greece, and Achaea, and many of the suitors of extraordinary ability. So therefore, following Odysseus' advice, her father, Tyndareus, made all suitors promise to defend Helen's marriage to the man he chose for her. When Paris took her to Troy, Menelaus invoked this oath. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Helen's other suitors, who between them represented the lion's share of Achaea's strength, wealth, and military prowess, were obliged to help bring her back. Thus, the whole of Greece moved against Troy in force, and the Trojan War began. Yeah. So I think what realistically probably happened in Greece at that time was probably that Paris and Helen got into some sort of actual affair.
Yeah.
And people just probably put all of this goddess and god stuff behind it to try to spice it up and make the story more interesting. Because back then, I'm sure it wasn't as interesting to hear about affairs as it is now. Now we obviously don't believe in gods or goddesses. That's for the most part, anyway.
Yeah.
So most people probably wouldn't believe that shit if we told them that, but...
Yeah, alternatively, or just as well, Menelaus was infuriated by this betrayal, but knowing Troy had legendary fortifications as well as a well-trained army, Menelaus sought the aid of his brother Agamemnon. So yeah, like you were saying, realistically, this is probably more akin to what happened.
Yeah.
So Agamemnon was the king of Mycenae and the leader of the entire fucking Greek army, according to Homer. Agamemnon was given his king's scepter and right to rule Mycenae and all the other Achaean Greeks by Zeus himself. He's presented as a great warrior but selfish ruler. He fucking shows that many a time throughout his story. His whole story, if you study him individually, he's a fucking dick. He is pretty much known for just kind of waltzing up to other countries with his army and just being like, hey, either give us your land and your soldiers, or I'm just gonna fuck you up. So, very fucking accurate. That's pretty much a great warrior and a selfish ruler. But yeah, Achilles joined the battle apparently and brought along a group of powerful soldiers called the Myrmidons. The reason why I say apparently is because the Homeric epic, the Iliad, introduces Achilles with his withdrawal from battle after being dishonored by Agamemnon. So from that point, we know he was there and he brought the Myrmidons and Patroclus. More on Patroclus later. Back to Agamemnon dishonoring Achilles, however, Agamemnon had taken a woman named Chryseis as his slave. Her father, Chryses, a priest of Apollo, begs Agamemnon for the return of her. Agamemnon refuses, and Apollo sends a plague amongst the Greeks. The prophet Calchas correctly determines the source of the troubles, but will not speak to Achilles. Will not speak unless Achilles vows to protect him. Achilles does so, and Calchas declares that Chryseis must return to her father. Agamemnon consents, but then commands that Achilles' battle prize Briseis, the daughter of Briseis, be brought to him to replace Chryseis. Angry at the dishonor of having his plunder and glory taken away, as he says later, because Achilles loves Briseis, with the urging of his mother Thetis, Achilles refuses to fight or lead his troops alongside the other Greek forces. At the same time, burning with rage over Agamemnon's theft, Achilles prays to Thetis to convince Zeus to help the Trojans gain ground in the war, so that he may regain his honor. As the battle turns against the Greeks, thanks to the influence of Zeus, Nestor declares that the Trojans are winning because Agamemnon has angered Achilles, and urges the king to appease the warrior. Agamemnon agrees and sends Odysseus and two other chieftains, Ajax and Phoenix, to Achilles with the offer of the return of Briseis and other gifts. Achilles rejects all Agamemnon offers him, and simply urges the Greeks to sail home as he was planning to do anyway. So basically, Agamemnon had a chick. He should have given her back, but then he wouldn't fucking give her back until he wanted to take Achilles' chick as a replacement. That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
And, Achilles being very honorable and shit like that, he was like, fuck you. So yeah, I don't fault Achilles for his wanting to be like, no, I'm not going to fucking do that.
Yeah. I also just want to point out, it's a little bit beside the subject, but the names like Ajax and Phoenix popping up and stuff like that, it's just more akin to like what we were talking about in the beginning, when we were saying, the Greek influences of like how it affects today's world and stuff like that. Like Ajax, we know is that household cleaner product. Phoenix, that's where we fucking live.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. So a lot of the names of stuff like that, you'll probably find, you'll be like, why is it named that? Or why does it have such a weird name? It's probably Greek mythology based. Like a lot of shit is. Yeah,
a lot of Arizonan shit is mostly like Spanish, Greek, and what's the other one? Like a little bit of Latin as well.
But I mean, like, especially is kind of weird, but a lot of like casino places and stuff like that, they seem to like center it around like Greek mythology stuff. You notice that?
Like Caesar's Palace and shit?
Yeah, like it's either Greek or Roman shit, because they kind of want to give that vibe of like,
yeah, because Caesar
power and wealthiness and stuff like that. So
yeah, Caesar was Roman, right?
Caesar was Roman, yeah.
Okay. We should probably do one on him eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, as the tides of war turn against the Achaeans, or the ancient Greeks, Patroclus, a dear friend of Achilles, convinces Achilles fucking somehow to let him lead the Myrmidid army back into battle wearing Achilles' armor. Patroclus succeeds in beating back the Trojan forces, but is motherfucked by Hector, Prince of Troy, brother to Paris, and the leader of the Trojan army. News of Patroclus' death reaches Achilles, which throws him into a deep grief, and I mean fucking deep grief. The earlier steadfast and unbreakable Achilles agonizes, touching Patroclus' dead body. After Patroclus, his body was burned, Achilles smeared himself with Patroclus' ashes and started fasting, which is, not eating. Imagine that, bro. Like, if I died, I don't think you would even fucking respond that way.
Depends. If somebody murdered you, then I'd probably do that, but...
You would smear yourself with my ashes?
I might go metal, I don't know. I'm like waiting for a moment to go that metal.
I guess, but...
So, I mean, if somebody murdered you and I could fucking get to them, I'd be like, I'm going fucking full on, just Dark Knight this shit.
Yeah, so he laments Patroclus' death and also requests that when he dies, his ashes be mixed with Patroclus. The rage that follows from Patroclus' death becomes the prime motivation for Achilles to return to the battlefield, and he returns to the battle with the sole aim of avenging Patroclus' death by killing Hector. Despite a warning that doing so would cost him his life, which fucking, Jesus, pretty accurate. After defeating Hector, Achilles drags his corpse by the heels behind his chariot for Achilles' strongest interpersonal bond. Achilles' strongest interpersonal bond was with Patroclus, whom he loved dearly. Now, I just want to point out how fucking metal that is. That he just motherfucks Hector, and then drags him back to his camp by rope from his chariot.
Well, and one of the things about Hector, too, is he was a fantastic warrior as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's one thing to understand, too. Achilles is amazing, obviously, we know that, because he's a demigod, basically. But Hector was probably the best warrior in Troy.
Yeah.
He was, like, hands down the most badass dude there was.
Yeah,
and
so...
Achilles just fucks him up with ease.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
But the thing about Hector was that he... Or rather, not Hector, but like the warning that someone was telling him, like, oh, it's going to cost you your life if you do this. Achilles took it as in, like, fucking Hector's not going to kill me. Like, no one can kill me. Are you stupid? It's not going to cost me my life. He just didn't, think about how they were saying it. And that's probably what the warning was anyway. But a lot of these warnings are more of, like, cyclical, and it happens in ways that you're not going to expect. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So, but also I want to point out his bond with Patroclus is a very well received in like the LGBTQ community. And actually, the more I look into it, it's pretty fucking accurate because it kind of seems like he had a relationship with Patroclus, like a intimate relationship with Patroclus. And we're going to talk about this later, but in the movie Troy, Patroclus was his cousin.
Yeah.
So that was like the reason for his upset.
And like I know that might upset a lot of people to think that Achilles might be like, gay or whatever, but
it was common.
Yeah, I was gonna say back then that really wasn't that weird, and he wasn't gay. I will say that he wasn't straight up, homosexual, but bisexual maybe because he was in love with Perseus. So that was a thing too, but he could have also been in love with Patroclus too. So, yeah. I mean, and often in a lot of like the old Greek stories about Achilles too, is he's very flamboyant and very
show-offish.
Like, yeah, very obsessed with his looks and how he's perceived and stuff. And I mean, like, let's be honest, that's like how a lot of homosexual guys like to be too. Very flamboyant, very...
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. All he cared about was his honor and how he was received, and to uphold that representation of I'm the baddest motherfucker around.
Yeah.
And, back in the old days, if you wanted to uphold that representation, you had to also look the part. You had to look like a golden warrior and wear this fucking, amazing flamboyant armor and shit.
Yeah, and that was also one of the things too, is I think in the lore of Achilles too, is he wears special armor too, if I'm not mistaken. He wears special armor given to him by the gods.
Yeah, something like that. But it was
it's like golden plate armor.
Yeah, it was
or something
golden
like
plate
that.
armor. I can't remember. I think I looked into it a little bit, but it was already long running, so I didn't put it in. But yeah. it's one of those things that, you know, it's a detail that you don't have to really care about, because honestly his sexual orientation has nothing to do with the story.
It doesn't really affect the story in any sort of way. So I mean, if you really care about him being homosexual or bisexual, then, you know,
Big
good for
fucking
you.
deal.
But
Yeah.
if you don't, then you can ignore it. I don't care.
Yeah, because Achilles would still kick your ass anyway.
Yeah, it's
Who
like,
gives a
he could
shit?
kick your ass if he was gay or if he wasn't, so who cares? But anyway, after that, Odysseus comes up with the great idea of feigning retreat and constructing the very famous Trojan horse, which was, you know, this giant wooden horse that was to trick the Trojans into thinking that the horse was a gift for the gods to ensure safe passage for the Greeks back across the ocean to the Aegean. So that, of course, was not the case. The horse actually held within it a number of soldiers, which included Achilles and Odysseus. Once inside Troy, they waited for nightfall when everyone would fall asleep, and then they opened the city gates, allowing the rest of Agamemnon's legion of forces inside the city, finally sacking the impenetrable city of Troy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the very big details about Troy too, is it was supposed to be this impenetrable fortress of a city. Nobody had ever invaded it. Nobody had ever successfully won a battle against Troy.
Yeah, it was kind of like Troy was like Agamemnon's white whale, his Moby Dick, and Menelaus Menelaus of Sparta knew that, like, there's no fucking way you're getting in that city with just Sparta's forces.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, realistically, if we're gonna put this in just realistic terms, it's boiled down to, you know, Paris fell in love with Helen, snuck her away, and then Menelaus, pissed off, went to Agamemnon, who commanded a fuck ton of soldiers already, like the majority of Greece. They attacked. Achilles fucking initially didn't side with Agamemnon, but then, you know, Hector killed his beloved Patroclus, and then that involved him wholeheartedly into the sacking of Troy. So that's summary of what it is.
Yeah. As far as the death of Achilles, even if considered solely as it occurred in the oldest sources, it's still a complex one with many different versions. In the oldest one, the Iliad, and as predicted by Hector with his dying breath, the hero's death was brought about by Paris with an arrow to the heel, according to Statius.
Yeah.
During the attack from the soldiers within Troy, or within the Trojan horse. In some versions, the god Apollo guided Paris's arrow. Some retellings also state that Achilles was scaling the gates of Troy and was hit with a poisoned arrow. All of these versions deny Paris any sort of valor, owing to the common conception that Paris was a coward and not the man his brother Hector was, and Achilles remained undefeated in battle. Which, you know, is it's made apparent too if you've watched that movie Troy. We're going to talk about the movie in big detail later, but it kind of goes back and forth in that movie too, like giving Paris, the character, the glory of being a good warrior, and then also taking it away because it shows how he is a coward at times, and then other times he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, like that movie does well on kind of like playing both sides of like realistic and the like retellings of the story and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
His bones.
Yeah, his bones were mingled with those of Patroclus, and funeral games were held. He was represented in the Aethiopus as living after death in the island of Leuce at the mouth of the river Danube.
So, at the end, he was still basically viewed as an undefeatable warrior, because he was just fucking sucker shotted basically by Paris. Basically, the only fucking way you were going to win against him is to get him off guard.
Yeah.
And, you know, no one could win in a fucking one-on-one.
Well, and especially with his weak spot being the heel, like how do you even fucking
That's the thing.
exploit that when you're in a fight?
That's the thing. Fuck Paris, because, like, even if he did kill him, his aim's shit. Like, obviously he was aiming for his fucking chest or his head.
Yeah, like you can't aim for somebody's heel and hit it unless you're like an absolute marksman.
Yeah, and he I guarantee you Paris accidentally fucking hit his heel. and then his heel was just like, oh, motherfuck, you know.
Well, and again, in a realistic sense, I do believe that Achilles was a real person, and I believe that he was real in like doing a lot of these things, like being undefeated in battle and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're saying, I think that this Paris guy accidentally shot Achilles in the heel, and that's why today they refer to it as like, oh, that was his only weakness. But in reality, Achilles just accidentally got shot in the heel, and then he was able to get hit a bunch of other times.
Yeah. So, oh fuck, man. It's I don't know. It's one of those like not movies. It's one of those stories that just it gives you a lot of thought, because Paris. Honestly, most of these characters aren't inherently bad, except for Agamemnon. I don't really like Agamemnon, but it just puts you in all these perspectives, and that's why I like this story. Is just because you can't really tell the whole story without telling like 7 other perspectives.
Yeah. But anyway, Sean, what are your favorite stories from Greek mythology?
Fuck, all of them. But I'm sure you don't want to sit here with me and make this episode fucking 5 hours long. I boiled it down to my favorite 3, just so you guys know it's a little bit summarized. But I think Chris is going to agree with me on these as well. So the first one is Prometheus and the Theft of Fire. I mentioned Prometheus earlier. He ended up creating humans, and yeah, he's actually kind of a badass. But he gets fucked, dude. So one day, Zeus distributed gifts to all the gods, and Zeus didn't care much for humans. But the Titan Prometheus, however, because he loved and felt sorry for humans, climbed up on Mount Olympus and stole the fire from Hephaestus' workshop. Hephaestus being the blacksmith of the gods, by the way. Put it in a hollow reed and gifted it to the humans. This way, humans could create fire, warm up, and make tools. Zeus became fucking very angry when he heard about this, and he took Prometheus to a high mountain, the Caucasus, and chained him to a rock with thin chains made from the smith god Hephaestus. And every day, Zeus would send an eagle that ate Prometheus' liver. For 30 years, Prometheus remained bound to the Caucasus until the great hero Hercules, Zeus's demigod son, finally released him from his torment. So, yeah, Prometheus created humans from like dirt and clay, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was what hit. You know, the gods didn't care about humans; they didn't really give a shit. But you know, fucking for Prometheus, the humans were his baby. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, of course he wanted to fucking take care of them and give them fire. And Zeus is just a cunt. And most of the stories, if you genuinely like Zeus when you read Greek mythology, like you're kind of a dick, honestly. All he does is fuck humans and make them.
Like, no, honestly, he's an asshole.
Yeah, he's a fucking piece of shit. But yeah, so Hercules eventually, you know, I think that was one of his tasks, like his 6 or 5 or whatever the fuck tasks.
Yeah, I think he had 6 tasks or something.
Yeah, it was like fighting a lion, freeing Prometheus, and all that shit.
Yeah, he had to fight the Nemean lion. I know that.
Yeah. Did you, like, isn't that fucked up for 30 years, once a day, having your liver eaten, and it would just grow back?
Yeah, that was one of the stories that I remember from that English class, is that it wasn't like it would just, like an eagle would come and eat the remains of his liver or whatever. His liver would regenerate. Yeah. It would grow back completely. And then every single day that would happen. So it was like an eagle would show up, chew out his fucking liver and all of his intestines. And then the next day, his liver and intestines would regrow. And a fucking eagle would come back and eat it all over again.
Yeah.
And he would just experience that agony for fucking 30 years. Like, yeah. That's insane. Like, that's what I mean. Like, Zeus is a dickhead, man. That's fucked up.
So, the second one is Pandora's Box. After Prometheus gave fire to the humans, Zeus decided to take vengeance. Again. Vengeance Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. He ordered Hephaestus to create the first human woman out of soil and water. So I guess Hephaestus create bad bitches. I didn't know that. Each god gave the woman a gift. Athena gave her wisdom, Aphrodite beauty, Hermes cunning, and so on. The name of the woman was Pandora, meaning all gifts in Greek. So Zeus gave Pandora a jar, warning her not to open it under any circumstances, and sent her to Prometheus' brother, Epimetheus. Yeah, Epimetheus. Prometheus has warned his brother not to accept any fucking gifts from Zeus. However, Epimetheus accepted Pandora, who, although tried hard to resist the temptation, opened the jar and released all evils upon the world. Hatred, war, death, hunger, sickness, and all the disasters were immediately released.
Gee, thanks, Pandora.
Yeah. Once again, fucking women stirring up shit. No. Yeah, so Pandora is just kind of like another version of kind of like the Garden of Eden, where what's her name? Eve eats the apple. It's just another version of that.
I do want to address the misogyny in that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's fucking...
It's
so very
fucked up.
obvious because that's the thing. Like, they're like, oh, we gave you everything. You're the perfect specimen, and you had to fuck it up.
Yeah, and the women fucked it up. I'm like, dude, there's misogyny in not only Greek mythology, but in Christianity. And I bet there's fucking misogyny in all the other religions.
Oh,
too.
yeah, fucking guaranteed. It's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, that's not going to go away. Back in the days, women weren't nearly as respected. You had every now and again, like Athena, just different models of women, but it was more to like have women have a role model to look up to. That's pretty much why they were created.
Well, and that's funny. I wanted to bring up Athena too, because do you know the origin story of Athena?
It's because Zeus had a headache and cracked his head open. Yeah.
So yeah, Athena, who is the goddess of war and wisdom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She's born from a headache that Zeus had. So a woman god is born from a headache that a male god had.
Yeah, and Aphrodite was born of fucking dick blood.
Yeah, I'm like, how misogynistic is that shit too?
It's so fucking bad, bro.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Anyway, the third and final tale is that of Daedalus and Icarus. So, the labyrinth in King Minos' palace was designed by a famous inventor and engineer, Daedalus. So, it is said that Athena herself taught Daedalus. King Minos commissioned Daedalus and his son Icarus the construction of the labyrinth that would hold the monster Minotaur, which is a half-man, half-bull. After finishing their work, King Minos imprisoned father and son inside the labyrinth, and in an effort to prevent knowledge from his labyrinth ever being spread to the public. It's kind of honestly, this is one of my favorite tales. It kind of gives me like the vibe of like you're working for a company and then they end up fucking you over by taking everything away from you, kind of shit, because they don't want you to tell them their secrets. Basically, there's at least 3 video games based off of just this.
Yeah.
So the father and son, Daedalus and Icarus, were thinking hard on how to escape until Daedalus came up with an idea. They gathered a lot of feathers from birds and glued them together with wax, thus making 4 large wings. They tied the wings to each shoulder and fled from the island of Crete. Daedalus had warned Icarus not to fly too close to the sun because the wax would melt. After passing the island of Delos, the boy, forgetting himself, flew high towards the sun, and the hot sun softened the wax that held the feathers together, and Icarus fell into the sea and drowned. Daedalus named the place where his son fell Icaria in his memory. And I don't know, it's just one of the like this story is mostly prevalent on don't fly too close to the sun.
Yeah, it's like that's one of those stories that's like very symbolic and
don't get ahead of yourself and shit like that. Where the story itself, it's kind of confusing because like Daedalus essentially was a genius, and he just got fucked over. Like, why would his son not heed his warning? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, a lot of these Greek stories don't really make a ton of sense if you like overanalyze them, but.
Yeah, so, but anyway, that spitballing, like, I don't know, were there any more? Because I think I had like Medusa. Have you ever heard the story of Medusa?
I don't know her origin story. I know she's like the queen of the Gorgons or whatever. And obviously, I mean, everybody should know the base facts about Medusa. Medusa is like this snake-like woman. So she's got basically like the snake body, or the snake lower body, so like her legs is like a snake, and then her upper body is like a human, and her face is, if I remember correctly, her face is supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah, her face was gorgeous. Her
hair is made of snakes.
Yeah.
And if you look at her, she will turn you to stone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like this story in particular is like one that's encapsulated in like the old Clash of the Titans movie from like 1970s or whatever. There's actually a really cool scene in that we'll talk about later.
So yeah, so Medusa was also called Gorgo, which is a fucking gross ass name.
Gorgo.
But was one of the 3 monstrous Gorgons, generally described as winged human females with living venomous snakes in place of hair. So if you wanted to have like a visual, I mean, I'm sure you guys could probably think of what a Gorgon or what Medusa looks like, but to give Chris a more accurate visual, I'm going to put it in words he can describe. Like, it's kind of like what a siren looks like in The Witcher 3. That's how they describe it.
I remember The Witcher 3 sirens.
They're flying, like they have wings. They kind of have like tentacly bodies. That's more what a Gorgon would look like.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played it, so
yeah. So, but the reason I want to point this out is just because we're on the topic of like misogyny in Greek stories, and this one is so fucking bad. So basically, Poseidon was married to. I think Athena or someone. He was married to another goddess, and he was having an affair with Medusa. Oh, or no. Medusa was raped by Poseidon, and then in jealousy, whatever goddess that Poseidon was with cursed her to become a Gorgon, and then she had her fucking head cut off by Perseus.
Yeah, the story of like how Perseus fought her was Hermes had lent Perseus some winged shoes that would grant him like, you know, speed to fly and all this other stuff and enhanced speed, and then Athena gave him like a polished shield, and that was how he defeated Medusa, because she, like I said, if you look at Medusa, she turns you to stone, so he had to look at her through the reflection, and that was how he could see his opponent. And then I actually think he cuts off her head.
Yeah, he fucking just straight up cut off her head. And
then uses her head as like a tool to be able to turn people to stone, actually.
Yeah. The thing is that Medusa really just got fucked over, like hardcore.
But yeah, the main point of the story is that Medusa got fucked over pretty hard.
She was raped by Poseidon, and then his wife or goddess or whatever the fuck cursed her, and then she was later hunted down for being a monster. Like, it's just like Medusa is very, very much viewed as just a monster, but anybody who knows her actual story, it's just sad. And, you know, she legit just got motherfucked over, and it's probably the apex of misogyny in these stories, but at the same time, it probably wouldn't be that good of a story if everything worked out. You know what I mean? Yeah, so...
And that's one of the things, too, is, like, misogyny is very heavily handed in Greek mythology, too, because, like, even Aphrodite, who's, like, the goddess of beauty and everything, if I'm not mistaken, she's, like, more times than not portrayed as, like, a manipulator.
Yeah.
Because of her beauty and everything like that, and I think that's pretty fucked up, too. Like, pretty misogynistic to make her like that, because it's like, oh, if you're hot, then you play people because of your beauty. And I'm like, okay, some girls do that, yeah, but not all of them.
Yeah. But anyway, we have a long list of fucking movies to get into, so let's get into our second segment, Tippler's Take Two.
Come on. So what's holding everything up here?
Art department.
So the grips are holding us back?
All right, try that take one more time.
1 second.
Hey, quiet on the set!
Tippler's Take Two. Hey, Mark.
Action!
Troy, Achilles, Agamemnon, Hector, and Paris. Chris, I know you want to fucking take the lead on Troy.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we already talked about the main story of Achilles and all that stuff, but Troy is it's by far one of my absolute favorite fucking, not even Greek movies, but just like they don't make movies like that nowadays, where it's like the big scale battles and stuff like that. Like, I mean, a lot of people will probably think of Lord of the Rings when they think of like big scale battles. But like Troy for me is like the one where they didn't use like a whole ton of CGI and stuff like that. They did use CGI, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
but they didn't use like a ton of it, and it was a lot of real actors charging at each other in these big scale battles. And for me, like, oh fuck, the authenticity of Troy is what makes it so damn good. And then just Brad Pitt, he fits every single fucking pinpoint accurate detail you could make about Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I think of Achilles, I cannot think of anybody else other than Brad Pitt in that movie. He is perfect. He is so perfect. Every line, every facial expression, every action and movement he makes. I can't even begin to explain how much I love that movie. Not only that, but it's made by, if I'm not mistaken, it's Ridley Scott, right?
I think so.
Yeah, Ridley Scott, and then oh man, I feel so bad for forgetting the guy's name that plays Hector's dad in the movie. I think it's Peter O'Toole. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
He's a very famous older actor, but he's so good. Yeah, and it has Eric Bana as Hector. It has Orlando Bloom as Paris. Yeah, there's like so many people in the movie. Menelaus is played by fucking what's his name? I can't remember.
He's from
like Super Troopers as the sheriff and all sorts of stuff.
No, that's Agamemnon.
No, Agamemnon is the. Oh no, yeah, you're right.
Menelaus is the Scott. The
yeah,
Scottish
Menelaus
dude
is a Scottish guy
from Braveheart.
Yeah, Braveheart and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it's got some. Oh, Brian Cox is the guy that I was trying to think.
Thank you.
But yeah, it has so many damn good actors in it. Just fucking like phenomenal writing. But the good part about Troy is it puts the Achilles story into like a realistic perspective. So like it does everything without like the like mystical side of things. And like I think that's why a lot of the like newer Greek mythology type movies don't do as well, is because they try to like incorporate all of that Greek mythology into it, and they put in all of that mysticism and magic and all that stuff. And I think that stuff doesn't really sell as well nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it does well in video games, because I mean, you know, well, we have video games I want to talk about.
Yeah.
But for movies, we want to see the realistic stuff. And like I was talking about, there's a really good, gritty, realistic side to like the Troy story and the Achilles story, and that's why that movie is so good. But if you want like a more like mysticism influenced type Greek movie, 300 is a really good.
Oh yeah, I
movie.
love that fucking movie.
It still has the like grittiness and stuff, but it has really good stylized action, as well as like it still has some like mystical sense to it and stuff too. But that one doesn't really follow any sort of particular. Well, it might. I mean, I don't know. Is the 300 story an actual Greek story? I think it might be,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah, it's a real Greek story. But yeah, let's talk about another classic that probably is a big one in a lot of our childhoods, is Hercules.
Yeah.
Just the story of Hercules. It kind of condenses like his actual what the fuck is it? Like the trials of Hercules or whatever.
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly, but the Hercules story was he was like a demigod or whatever, and he had to earn his right to be an actual full-on god. And it was he had to complete all these sorts of trials or whatever to become one. And like, yeah, I know the Disney version doesn't do like necessarily a good job of like detailing that.
But it's not really
still
about that.
It's still entertaining, and yeah, like it has other points aside from that too. But
yeah, and it just brings in like a couple of like like Hades is the main bad guy in that movie, and then the satyr, I don't remember his name.
Philoctetes,
like he was a real like trainer of warriors and shit like that, and it's just really cool. Like it's a good introduction for kids into Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Until they become of age and they're like, oh shit, this is fucked up.
Yeah, but I even remember when we were in, I think it was high school, we were asking one of our teachers to show that movie. I think it was the same class actually, when we were talking about the Greek mythology thing earlier. And I was saying I had an English class. Yeah, we were asking her to play that movie, and she was like, no, it's not representative of like the story at all.
Yeah.
And like back then, of course, I was like, fuck you, just play the damn movie. But yeah, now of course I can realize that like the Disney animated movie does nothing close to like what the actual story of Hercules is.
Yeah.
It really just gives you kind of like the gist of it and then puts its own twist on it. But I mean, honestly, it does it in a more entertaining way because when you start analyzing these Greek stories, they're a little bit convoluted and weird.
Well, yeah, like with Troy, they can't involve all the shit having to do with gods and stuff. They wanted to do a more realistic take on it. That's why they made that's why they made Patroclus his cousin, because he fell in love with Briseis, so they didn't want to have like a love triangle thing going on.
I think that was just the Hollywood thing of not wanting to make the love triangle confusing, especially because most people in an audience aren't comfortable with bisexuality.
At the time, it was more...
Yeah, and this movie was made quite a few years back. Yeah. So most of the audience members probably weren't going to be comfortable with the idea of bisexuality.
And then, it wasn't that Paris... It wasn't that Paris was that stole her. Like, Paris didn't steal Helen necessarily, or that he didn't do any shit with, like, he didn't choose Aphrodite in a fucking beauty contest. He was on, like, for a while having an affair with Helen while Troy and Sparta were trying to make a peace treaty.
Yeah.
And then he just fucked it all up because Hector was working on the peace treaty, and Paris accompanying Hector just fucked it up by slamming Helen.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but going back, if you haven't seen Troy, absolutely 100% watch that movie. That is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. Another one is Clash of the Titans. It follows the story of Perseus, and it wasn't that bad when I first saw it. I never got to see Clash of the Titans 2. I genuinely don't remember a lot of it, but it's from the famous scene of Release the Kraken, which we talked about in episode
the underwater
4.
one.
Yeah, in episode 4, we talked about that movie. Again, it's not bad. I don't remember it being insanely good, but it...
Have you ever seen the 1981 version?
Mm-mm.
That one's actually pretty good. I mean, like, you obviously have to respect the older technology of the time, but I can still remember there's the scene where he fights Medusa in that one, and that's kind of why I remember the stuff about Perseus fighting Medusa with the shield and everything, because I can remember that scene. And then there's a scene with the Kraken in that one too, and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's like the climax of it. And I think the second one is like they actually start bringing the Titans back or whatever. But
because there's Wrath of the Titans, I think the sequel to Clash of the Titans.
Speaking of Titans, like resurging, Immortals is one of it. It has Mickey Rourke and Henry Cavill. And I did not like this movie at all.
I tried very hard to like that movie,
I very much did not like that movie. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to shit on the movie. I honestly like Mickey Rourke and I like Henry Cavill. Like, the cast seemed fine. It's just like
they tried to make like 300 without the charisma of 300.
Yeah.
And that's what it seemed like. It seemed like if you made the movie 300 without any of the best parts of 300.
Yeah. But at the end of it, I think that's what they were trying to do, was release Titans from Tartarus, but Titans were just like a grip of warriors in a cage or some shit.
Yeah, it was something stupid.
Some fucking dumb. And then like gods were just like legit just sitting. I don't know. It was
like the Jedi Council and like
that's kind of what it seemed like.
Like they just sat there and discussed things instead of being anything. I was like, okay, well, how are we supposed to be scared by these people if they're just sitting down?
And I think like Apollo ends up like coming down and like fucking up some people. Like they had like one cool fight scene. I'm just like, okay.
I know. Like I remember I watched that movie, but I don't remember shit from it because that's how.
Yeah, I didn't want to retain any of that.
Yeah, I didn't care about any of it.
And the last one is Percy Jackson. I actually read the books. I know Chris hasn't or seen the movies, but the movies are okay. I mean, it's mostly like just funny, and because I actually saw Percy Jackson in theaters because it was on a field trip. It was good. It was what you expect it to be, you know. But Percy Jackson essentially follows the whole demigod route, where I don't know why. It's kind of funny because it's supposed to be it's a camp where it's a bunch of children or like teenagers and stuff that were demigods from all these separate gods. But it's kind of a weird premise because you're just like, yeah, it kind of just points out like all these gods, all they fucking do is just fuck their human counterparts.
Yeah.
And like it's more adult under the skin, but the stories themselves, like they actually go they say like Olympus is actually like ever moving, and it's not at the time, like way back in the day it was on top of Mount Olympus, but now it's It's on top of the Empire State Building.
How did I know you were going to say that? I haven't even seen the movie, and I was going to say Empire State Building.
Yeah, well, it's just supposed to be like
They just picked a pinnacle of like.
I don't know. Well, it's convenient for like the plot or whatever, and also they're just trying to point out like it's an ever moving like realm essentially. So like itself isn't a bad idea, but it's very much a kiddie book and a kiddie movie, and it's not bad. It's also a good introduction to Greek mythology for kids and shit like that. Uma Thurman actually plays Medusa in the movie.
Yeah, I saw that when I was looking up stuff for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I didn't know that because, like I said, I haven't seen the.
But in that movie,
I haven't seen the Percy Jackson stuff. But
yeah, in that movie, they make her out to be like just a bitch. Like where she's just like, "I'll find you." It's like, shut up, Uma Thurman. But I kind of want to go into sports. I'm not a big sports guy, but obviously there probably wouldn't be a lot of entertaining like big fucking sports events and shit if it wasn't for like Greek and Roman capitalization on those.
Yeah, well, hands down, the Olympics.
Yeah,
is because of Greeks, interest in the sports. So
yeah, but those mostly came from like running, jumping, long jumping, the discus throw, wrestling, and boxing. So I don't know, like with Romans, it's that one's more matched with like the gladiator kind of shit. We'll probably get into those separately because that's just as fucking cool to me. But yeah,
the running was like kind of most of it is actually pretty close to like what we do today, to like the long sprints and stuff like that, or not long sprints, but a short distance sprinting and then long jump, distance throw. Or discus throw, which is more equivalent to like shot put nowadays.
Yeah.
Which, is just chucking the like metal cannonball basically.
Yeah. Frisbee hard mode.
Yeah, and then frisbee basically, which is, discus throwing is basically just chucking this giant weight that's shaped like a frisbee. Wrestling and boxing are self-explanatory, but that kind of, came about from Greek stuff. And even like stuff like horse racing and shit like that was actually from Greek influence, because they did a lot of the I think when it started, actually it was more like chariot racing.
Mm-hmm.
So they had like teams that were in a chariot that would race each other. But yeah, like now what we have is like the horse jockeys that would race against each other and stuff like that, but that's still influenced from Greek sports.
Yeah. I don't know, it's kind of funny just thinking back in the day, like you have to, like there's absolutely fucking nothing to do except go to war or be like, hey, how strong are you?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, are you fighting? No. You want to fight? You want to wrestle? Like, what's wrestling? Fighting without weapons. Okay.
What's boxing? Fighting with our hands. Dude, like,
it's
you,
like, well,
you
no,
curl your hand.
And I don't want to do that. You want to see how far I can chuck that to prove how strong I am? So, like, even though we aren't fighting, you could prove that if we aren't fighting, I could still kick your ass.
Yeah, it is really just like, Greeks were the makers of the dick measuring contest.
Yeah, they really are.
Of course,
they're the fucking Chads.
Yeah,
of the ancient world.
I also want to bring in System Shock again, and fucking honestly, BioShock, because System Shock, the main antagonist of System Shock was Shodan, and she was modeled after Medusa, I think. So the AI that controls like the station or whatever the fuck you're on, I still need to play that, but yeah, the AI is like supposed to be modeled after Medusa. So that's just a cool little, tidbit.
Mm.
But with BioShock, almost every fucking area in BioShock is named after like Greek gods and stuff.
Yeah, or Roman gods, but either way,
like
it's influenced from that stuff.
I'm pretty sure like Hephaestus was like in like the engine or like the power supply, like bottom area of Rapture.
Yeah, I remember their like boiler room area was like Hephaestus's something, and then like I said, they also had Roman influence. So one of the areas was Neptune's bounty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember everywhere else, but it had a lot of Roman or Greek influence for the names and stuff of the areas.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I don't know. It's fucking.
I play that game. I don't care.
Yeah, I can't fucking talk about BioShock enough.
I know. I love that game so damn much.
There's honestly plenty of examples. The apex example that I know that if any of you play video games is God of War. Now, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Chris didn't play the first 3.
I played the very first God of War.
Yeah.
Not all the way through, but I played it.
Yeah, and it's an individual story of a man named Kratos who fought for the God of War Ares, and basically he was betrayed by the God of War because he told him, like, oh, hey, go sack this village. And little did Kratos know, the village held the souls of his, or basically it held his wife and his daughter, to which in his rage and his fucking bloodlust, he accidentally murdered. And the oracle of said village cursed him to forever hold their ashes on his body. So if you ever look up Kratos, he is white with red tattoos, and the white on his skin is the ashes of his loved ones. And by the way, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I know he's dark skinned because he's Greek, but he's black. Okay, he's one of those characters that, like, he's definitively a black character.
His features are just black.
Yeah, and
like, I don't care.
Yeah,
He's
and there's
black.
nothing like, and like I
He
got
needs to be played by a black actor.
Well, he was.
If they
new
make
one.
a live action movie,
Yeah.
it needs
Oh
to be
yeah.
played by a black person.
Yeah.
Like, it just flat out needs to be.
Like, I don't give, because like in the game I was confused because, like, you know, I was a kid and I was just like, oh, like, why is he so dark skinned? So I already came to the conclusion that he was black when I was younger, but I didn't keep in mind that, like, you know, Greeks are predominantly more tan.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't fucking care at this point. The newest God of War, where they go into Norse mythology and shit. Yeah, like, his voice actor is black and everything like that. Like, he should just be a fucking black actor.
Yeah, just cast a black person as him. We don't care. Don't give a shit. Cast a black person as him.
He's they play way better as Kratos.
Yeah.
Anyways, but later on in the story, Kratos essentially defeats Ares, and at the end of in the first one, his goal was to find Pandora's box, and if he were to open Pandora's box, he would get the power to defeat Ares, and he opens it and he defeats Ares. Bing, bang, boom. The second one, he fights the Fates, which, you know, so the can't fucking talk. But basically, they hold strings, and the strings are individual lives, and they can cut them at any point. Fucking Kratos is a badass motherfucker. In the second one, he gets killed by Zeus, comes back from Hades to enact revenge on Zeus for taking away his powers. The third one, he fucking wages all-out war with the help of the Titans on Mount Olympus, and then the Titans are just like, okay, we don't need you anymore, and then he just fucking back-to-back fucks up Titans and gods. And the reason why I like it even more is because now they've gotten to the point where he's an old man, and he's humble, and he's raising a new son, which I'm not going to spoil anything because it's still relatively new.
Yeah.
But he's raising a new son that he had with another woman that I don't want to say. But yeah, he moved along along where, like, Scandinavian roots are and shit, apparently, and now he's encountering Norse gods. But it's very black and white because in the first 3, he's a very angry, very vengeful person. He's like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill you and all that shit. But in the new one, he's calm.
Yeah, this one's giving him a little bit more human characteristics.
Yeah, and, like, he's not as much of that warrior anymore. Or he is very much a warrior, but it's just kind of cool where it's like...
He's an old, grizzled veteran.
Yeah, and he just doesn't want to fight anymore. But yeah, and fucking play those games, please. You get to fight the fucking Hydra. You get to fight the Kraken, their version of the Kraken. You get to fight Zeus. You get to fuck up Poseidon. You get to fight anybody
Hermes,
you can think of.
Hercules, yeah.
Hermes, Hercules, everybody. You get to fuck Aphrodite. I'm not kidding.
I've seen that.
You get to fuck Aphrodite every single the first 3. I'm actually surprised they didn't have, like, an Easter egg in the newest one, where it's just him beating off. Because there's no one to have sex with in the fourth one, I mean. So,
yeah.
But yeah, in the first 3, that was like an ongoing joke in the game where you can have sex with women.
You just go back in there and fucking do a little mini game where it's like QTE, quick time events where you just press buttons.
And the first one's the ship that you arrive in. The ship that you arrive into the port, he already has prostitutes with him. And the second one, it's like I think it's a bath, like you're going through a bathhouse and they're like secret behind like these curtains or whatever, and you can fuck them. And then the third one is Aphrodite. You get to actually fuck Aphrodite, who just doesn't give a shit about the war going on Olympus. But yeah, please check out that game, because fuck, like, I probably know more about Greek mythology, or at least the interest in Greek mythology, because of that game. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to think of, or movies or games?
Yeah, the other one for me, which is one that I play a lot. Well, I don't play it so much recently, but I have played it way more than I should admit. But Smite, which is a MOBA, which some of you might know what that is, like League of Legends or Dota. Smite is a third-person action MOBA, which is where you get to play as like any sort of god from any sort of pantheon that you can think of, really. So like you can play as Zeus and fight. Shit, I don't even know. You can play as Zeus, fight
Cupid.
You can fight Achilles. You can fight Anubis. Yeah, so like gods from Egyptian, gods from Slavic. Baba Yaga's in the game. Bacchus, the god of wine from Roman. Bakasura from Hindu. Yeah, so you can play any sort of god from any sort of pantheon and fight each other. Obviously not ones from Christianity, no matter how much that joke comes up. Everybody's like, why don't you make Jesus? I'm like, they're not going to make Jesus ever.
Dude, if they made Jesus, I would be all in. Because like, even on this show, we don't fucking talk about Christianity in terms of like, because who cares, but like everyone knows like, oh, heaven and hell, like it seems like it's common knowledge. So like I want to go in on the fucking the theologies and
yeah, I'm not so much afraid about offending anybody, because I myself like am not necessarily Christian. I'm probably like an unorthodox Christian.
Yeah.
But I'm not so much offended about, or not so much worried about offending people, but just Christianity is just so overdone as far as like, everything. Like
everyone's like, we're done.
What can you learn about it? I don't know.
Yeah.
What could you really learn about Jesus that you haven't already fucking heard somewhere?
They can but I'm not even lying. If they add like South Park's version of fucking Jesus with like, he's just like a grizzled guy in a trench coat with Uzis and sunglasses. So yeah, it's time to get nailed. Yeah, it's just if they're
gonna get wined and dined. No, but Smite is a good game. Not only just for being able to play gods like Zeus and Poseidon, shit like that. They have like Zeus, Poseidon, Achilles, like basically everybody we've talked about here, Kronos. But not only that, but it gives you like little tidbits of lore that you can learn about these gods. So like some of the stuff that I know about gods and shit like that from other pantheons is stuff that I've learned from playing that game. So it's actually cool. Yeah. And it's stuff that obviously they did their research on. They didn't just make up or anything. Mm-hmm. It's all stuff from real lore and everything. So yeah, it's a really cool game if you're interested in like the theology of certain pantheons like Greek or Egyptian or whatever. That's a good game to play. But another good game to play in more recent years that has just come out. Well, not just come out. It came out in like 2018, I think.
Yeah.
Was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I have, and I haven't played nearly enough. But from what I played, it was pretty good, and it was a lot better than the other Assassin's Creed games. And I'm sorry if you're a AC, fanboy, but the original games are kind of trash.
I like the original games.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you go back and really play like the first one.
No, the first one's mostly story. Like I'm not gonna lie.
The first one's pretty awful gameplay wise.
Did you play like Brotherhood or any?
I didn't play Brotherhood.
Yeah,
and I watched gameplay of the second one. I didn't play it myself, but
yeah, the second one's good. Brotherhood and Revelations where it really shines, and then it starts getting a little bit more like, oh, we're gonna change stuff up with Black Flag, and honestly, it should have ended at Assassin's Creed 3. I don't care. Whoever fucking wants to argue with me. I don't care. It should have ended at Assassin's Creed 3.
The modern day storyline for Assassin's Creed, which is by far the worst aspect of that game, I don't care.
Yeah, as soon as Desmond
from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is like one of my favorite things about it. Yeah. They have a modern storyline for the game, but it's secondary to the past part, which is, I think, how Assassin's Creed should be.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I think like the Black Flag and on up till like Syndicate or some shit. Like if you're gonna have like whatever storyline's going on behind the scenes, just focus on the main one. Because like Brotherhood, it mostly focuses like the second Brotherhood and Revelations all focus mostly on Ezio, and the third one it starts being like really split half and half with like Desmond and Connor.
Yeah. That was my problem with the game, is it just didn't decide what part of the fucking timeline it wanted to be on. It wanted to focus on the main part, and then it wanted to focus on the past part, and like too much of it was just boring.
Yeah, but then as soon as Desmond died, I'm like, okay, well, you know, at least he saved the world. That's the end of Assassin's Creed. And then they're just like, but now we're making video games with Animus technology, and you're like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, if you haven't played Assassin's Creed, you probably don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
It's so convoluted, it's hard to explain.
But initially, it's basically it's a character that you're playing gets into a thing called an animus that analyzes your genetic memory and visualizes it for you. So because of that genetic memory, you can see what the person in the past experiences. So in the first one's just a perfect example. Desmond Miles gets abducted and gets put in an animus, and they're analyzing a historical figure named Altair, and they're trying to figure out where a relic is, essentially, because they knew Altair came in contact with this relic. So they're tracing it as far back as they can, and in order to have it be a stable connection, instead of pinpointing one specific memory, you have to go back like a certain amount of time or whatever for it to be a stable connection with an event. With a specific event they're looking for. And it's mostly just like them trying to explain their game mechanics, basically. But because if they're just like, oh yeah, this engineering is perfect and we can just get this fucking relic right now, like, there would be no game. So yeah. It's just stupid game logic that they have to throw in there. But ultimately, yeah, I've heard good things about Odyssey and Valhalla, which I know that you're probably going to go in on.
Hell yeah.
And whatever the last one was, Origins. That was like Egyptian stuff. Yeah, that I think about covers it for our Tippler's Take 2.
And cut.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
Zeus, Poseidon, Achilles. All of our favorite Greek gods and demigods. We hope you enjoyed what we talked about here today, and if you did, please drop us a review if you can, and share the show with your friends, family, and coworkers so you can help us get this show out there.
If you want to reach out to us or suggest a topic, correct us on something, or just say hi, you can reach us at tipplers2centspodcast@gmail.com or message us on Facebook. Make sure you're subscribed or following on whatever platform you're listening to. That way you never miss an episode. We also have new episodes on every Monday at midnight, available for almost all major platforms like Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. And keep an eye out, because you can still message us Tippler's t-shirt and get a raffle ticket or whatever that we're going to eventually announce the winner on our next episode, and you get a free t-shirt. So please message us that for your chance to win.
Thank you once again for joining us today. Next week, we are going to be talking about the big ol' hairy naked man beast that roams the forest woodlands. Sean, when he's had too much to drink after a night of camping.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We're talking about Sasquatch, a.k.a. Bigfoot, a.k.a. Fur Daddy Sr. So we'll see you in the next major battle when the gods of Olympus challenge each other to an eternal cosmic battle for power and glory. Or maybe we'll just see you in the next episode. Peace.
Drink responsibly, think responsibly. Bye.